Welcome to Wake Up Canada News. I'm Brad Wild. We strive to bring Canadians up-to-date news on items that you won't hear on mainstream news outlets like the Liberal-funded CBC, for example. Now, the question is have you heard about Bills C-223 and Bill S-233? Now, let me explain a little bit about identifying bills. When a bill is prefaced with the letter C, it stands for the House of Commons, and S stands for Senate. So two different bills, two different places. They all have to vote. The purpose of these bills are to introduce the UBI. What's a UBI? Well, how about a universal basic income for Canadians? Sounds like a reasonable idea, doesn't it? Heck, shouldn't all Canadians be guaranteed a basic income? Well, after this, you're going to have to do some second guessing. Let's look at the implications and purpose of introducing this concept. Now, here's the history behind these two bills. C-223 was sponsored by an NDP Member of Parliament, Leah Gazan, and S-233 was sponsored by Senator Kim Pate. The Basic Income Canada Network, or BEIN, worked with MP Leah Gazan and Senator Pate into introducing and tabling these bills. Now, thankfully, due to massive public pushback last year, Bill C-223 is now dead in the water, so to speak. Now, there was a public letter-writing campaign, phone calls were made, and emails were sent from people like you, just like you. You knew about it, you did the right thing, you went after those MLAs and the House of Commons representatives to really protest these two bills. Now, the Basic Income Canada Network called it a massive disinformation campaign at the time. Bill S-233 was recently sponsored by Senators Kim Pate and Rosa Galvez. The two bills are word for word identical. There's nothing different about them. Sounds like they were working together. Well, they obviously were. From a 2019 Policy Options article co-written by Senator Kim Pate titled, "It's Time to Consider a Guaranteed Livable Income." Unlike the current support offered by social assistance, a guaranteed livable income would not impose strictly eligibility criteria nor require recipients to work or get clawed back if recipients were to exceed a particular financial threshold. So, wait a minute. Let me get this straight. No strict eligibility criteria. Does that mean no one needs to work at all? Who the hell's going to pay for all of this? Some great questions. Now, according to the Parliamentary Budget Officer, the cost of a universal basic income scheme would start at $85 billion a year and rise to $93 billion by 2025. This would require an increase in personal income taxes by almost 50%, or tripling of the GST. Well, that sounds like tax slavery, doesn't it? Paying half of your wages to the government in addition to being taxed again on your remaining income with GST, fuel taxes, carbon tax. Yep, you'll owe nothing, and they'll be happy. Now, here at Wake Up Canada News, we do the research for you with the reference links in our show notes because, well, we do our homework. That's why. Now, where do we get this notion of universal basic income, and where did it come from? Who's pushing this agenda, too? Well, there's a lot to tell. The Policy Options 2019 article by Senator Pate goes on to talk about pilot programs tested in Manitoba and Ontario back in 1974, if you can believe that. Plus, they did some more in 2017, respectively. But Ontario's program and plans to analyze Manitoba's data were both canceled after there were changes within the government. Pilot projects sponsored by what organization exactly? Projects sponsored by the Basic Income Earth Network? That's the BEIN. From this mother organization, there are offspring all over the world, including the Basic Income Canada Network. Don't all of these organizations' names sound alike? It's really hard to keep track of them all, isn't it? But we're going to break it down. Let's talk about the Basic Income Canada Network 2022 annual report. It states the following. The final report of the Green Resilience Project presents the results, themes, and recommendations drawn from conversations among diverse people, including youth, Indigenous peoples, artists, and cultural workers, immigrants, and other newcomers, some living in environmentally precarious and income-challenged communities. The Green Resilience Project was managed and delivered by Energy Mix Productions, Basic Income Canada Network, Coalition Canada Basic Income, and other NGOs. Energy Mix Productions is also a government-funded, taxpayer, let's say it properly, NGO. They're part of Science Writers and Communicators of Canada, sponsored by the federal and provincial government agencies such as the IDRC and the Online News Association, primarily funded by the Democracy Fund in the U.S., plus an active participant in the Covering Climate Now News Collaborative. And they claim to be unlike any other full-fledged environmental NGOs because the others don't usually declare themselves ever as media. Well, good for them, I guess. A little honesty. They're actually telling us this time. How about that? Partnerships are fundamental to the IRDC, International Development Research Center, because they support Strategy 2030 to contribute meaningfully to the global development and to achieving sustainable development goals. You see how this is all starting to work. It's an intricate web that eventually leads back to the World Economic Forum's agendas 2030 and 2050. Look around you, folks. 15-minute city initiatives are all part of that agenda. And they're already starting to take shape here in Canada. Energy Mix Productions are the lead partners behind the Green Resilience Project. They're paid by our government to produce and promote the World Economic Forum and the UN's climate change ideology. Our link to the climate change, to negative health outcomes, and income security. All the while they themselves have created climate change using geoengineering such as chemtrails and HAARP. They created negative health outcomes by forcing untested dangerous COVID injections upon an unsuspecting public while creating the need for income security by destroying the economy. Now, what do all these organizations have in common? They're part of the climate change business model, government-funded, and therefore a taxpayer-funded news industry. A network that actively creates and nurtures climate news. Part of a billion-dollar investment industry. The industry is primarily funded by NGOs and federal government, of course, under the guise of the climate change initiatives. It's all at the core, and simply put, propaganda. Here's a quote from Energy Mix Productions. It's a step beyond anything a media organization would usually take on, and it's brought us a richness of frontline insights that we couldn't have picked up any other way. We're planning to continue and expand the Green Resilience Project, and we're curious to learn how a community news outlet and a community outreach initiative can inform and complete each other. The Government of Canada provided funding to the Basic Income Earth Network through Environment and Climate Change Canada's Climate Action and Awareness Fund. Senators Kim Pate and Rosa Galvez, on the launch of the report, noted that consistent with Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change's 6th Assessment Report, which emphasized that avoiding the worst consequences of climate chaos is still possible, but only if governments take immediate and decisive action by 2030. The Green Resilience Project identifies income security. Not having to fear being able to afford food, shelter, and other necessities is a key factor that empowers people and communities with options to participate in and drive climate solutions. Now, in March 2022, the Basic Income Canada Network made a written federal budget submission, again calling for basic income. They also wrote in support of parliamentarians working for a basic income in the face of disinformation campaigns designed to spread fear and distrust, not just of this policy, but of democracy and informed governance. Green Resilience Project, from their website, climate change and income insecurity are two of the most urgent challenges facing Canada and the world. The climate crisis is accelerating. Canada has made a commitment to reduce its greenhouse gas emissions to as close to zero as possible by 2050 with a net zero. And a fast transition to a green economy lies before us. But that moment has arrived at a time of deep income inequality, when so many Canadians face deep insecurity and uncertainty about their incomes and livelihoods. Our experience with COVID-19 has shown us that governments, individuals, and communities can quickly shift priorities and take dramatic action when required. Recent public opinion polls show strong to overwhelming public support for action on both climate change and income security. The conversations we support community partners to deliver in the course of this project will enable people from a wide range of communities and backgrounds, including people who are often left out of public consultations, to talk about how these issues play out and interact, what a just practical transition would look like in their own lives, and what policymakers can do to help that transition to be a green. What about the general public, the taxpayers? Will we be consulted? So far, not likely. If we look further into their partnerships, public-private partnerships, NGOs, and corporations, it's always follow the money, and all roads lead to Rome. In this case, all roads lead to the World Economic Forum, the UN, and other unelected entities. We can also say this is humanity's greatest threat to sovereignty. Basic Income Earth Network, BEIN, signed a Memorandum of Understanding with the United Nations Development Program, or UNDP, in February of 21. The aim of BEIN's partnership with UNDP is to advance, a more systematic consideration of basic income as a policy tool for socioeconomic recovery in situations of crisis, be they related to pandemics, civil conflict, or natural disasters. Now, based upon what we've experienced and witnessed in Canada over the last 3 years, you may be concerned that the UBI can and probably will be used as a policy tool for future pandemics. Many hardworking Canadians were denied EI because they refused the mRNA injections. EI that were, forced to contribute and pay for themselves out of their own wages. Denied EI simply for exercising their right to body autonomy, one of our most basic and fundamental human rights. Just imagine being completely reliant upon your government for universal basic income, for your food and shelter, and they deny you based on your vaccination status. A few years ago, I wouldn't have imagined that it would be possible, but here we are now. Wake up, Canada. Back to Basic Income Earth Network's partnership with the United Nations Development Program. They state that the UNDP brings to the partnership its global policy network and wealth of expertise and development practice, as well as its global reach through its local presence in developing and emerging countries, including through direct engagement with national governments. Basic Income Earth Network offers a unique network of knowledge and expertise necessary for the operation of this policy tool. This is how non-elected multinational corporations and organizations make recommendations and create policy for our government to implement on their behalf. The government was created to be our public servants. They have forgotten that they work for us. We need to remind them of this. Is this even legal, or is this treason? We find the same format used in municipal governments to promote 15-minute cities, municipal leader roundtables for Basic Income Initiative State. The Basic Income Earth Network is eager to announce the creation of their International Municipal Leaders Roundtable, a conversation about the possibilities and realization of basic income at local, municipal, and citywide regional levels. The purpose is to facilitate a conversation between the different local authorities, municipal leaders, governors, and other subnational forms of government, to share their experience with each other and find the tools needed to issue an unconditional basic income to the people in their territories. From Basic Income Earth Network's 2021 report, Basic Income Earth Network has worked with the Jain Family Institute and other organizations to establish the Basic Income Research and Action Lab that brings together leaders and researchers of basic income and other experiments around the world, and partnerships that are evolving with the Freiburg Institute for Basic Income Studies, the United Nations Development Program, and UNESCO. So, there are other experiments now around the world. What other experiments? Social engineering? How about an engineered pandemic? They are now cross-referencing data from the last 3 years to determine lessons learned that will be used for future manufactured global emergencies, such as the climate crisis. And who are the Basic Earth Income Network's partners? Well, one of them is the Jain family. This is often a common thread. All of these groups are interrelated, and one leads to the other. This is how they're shaping and changing the world. Remember Agendas 2030 and 2050? Examples of recent and current Jain projects. The Center for Active Stewardship. It launched in 2022. The Center for Active Stewardship studies the relationship between the asset management industry and private sector action on climate change. In its first major project, a rating system of mutual funds and ETFs highlight proxy voting as a mechanism for environmental action, sponsored by, an unknown philanthropist. AI for the public good from the Jain family, a digital ethics initiative with additional philanthropic support. Where is this initiative focuses on unlocking the potential of AI for the common good. As a member of the UN-led Global Data Access Initiative, they're developing a framework for the ready and ethically sound use of data for social and humanitarian needs. With the World Bank, among others, they advise on the ethical use of such data and AI systems in lower and middle income countries. Does this sound like something related to central bank digital currencies or CBDCs? It does, doesn't it? This is from the strategic decarbonization of the European Union. In partnership with the Atlantic Council, they're hosting a series of convenings and publishing a set of briefings on the challenges and opportunities of the energy transition in the EU. They're leading research, framing, and policymaker outreach to building strategies for a future of sustainable and secure energy in Europe. Climate change, climate geoengineering, climate wars, all designed to move us forward to Agendas 2030 and 2050, sustainable development, and net zero. These initiatives in themselves will create the perceived need for a universal basic income, create economic hardships and uncertainty by destroying our national economies, making you reliant on the government for your food and shelter. In the process, you'll be willing to give up your freedom and your sovereignty. Those that will be fortunate enough to avoid needing the UBI will be greater burdened to support those on UBI. See how it all fits together like a puzzle? It's already started. Problem, reaction, and solution. It's a lot to take in for one episode. Nonetheless, if you're just hearing about this for the first time, please know that we're doing everything we can to bring you the actual facts. And you yourself can see all the links to these issues firsthand and verify our findings in our show notes. Thanks to our writer and researcher, Sane Lady, for all her continued efforts to do the homework needed to cover such important issues and topics facing Canadians and the world alike. I'm Brad Wilder. Thanks for watching Wake Up Canada News. Remember, you're the voice, and it's time to make it count.